tonight's theme for Worth Repeating is bail. These are going to be stories about needing to get away and get away fast. Tori, have you ever had to bail on anything?
Dude, I love running away. One thing about me, I'm going to run away. Yeah. One time I outran a cop.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
16-year-old me was really on the edge. But he was really embarrassed. He didn't report me.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Have you ever bailed on anything?
Does bailing from a toxic relationship count?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Okay, good. Then yes, I've done that.
I was saying delicious to the toxic part. So tasty. All right. We got into it. You guys ready? We got 7. I'm so excited. Are you guys ready or what? Make some noise.
Yeah.
Awesome. The first storyteller is Crystal Peter. Crystal's going to share a story about a family trip, a broken mirror, and the need to get out of Mexico fast.
Come on, guys. Let's give it up for Crystal Peters.
Hey guys, so the story takes place about 22 years ago, early 2000s. I'm a young 16-year-old girl growing up in southwestern Minnesota. I know, how did I end up here? I'm the first generation of my family that came from Mexico. So we didn't have your normal vacations where, it's Disneyland or the beach or whatever, right? So when my mom was a single mom, so give it up to all the hardworking single moms. When my mom would have vacation time, we would go to Mexico, San Luis Potosí to be specific. Usually it always ended up falling around like a quinceañera, a wedding, a baptism, something big that was gonna occur. So this year we go and my brother, I'm 16 at the time, my brother's about 24, and he brings along his girlfriend and his best friend. So it's a long drive, about 2 days to be specific, right? So we go, we're sharing our stories, whatever, right? We finally reach, we're in Mexico. Again, I don't know, a quinceañera, a wedding, maybe everything, right? And we're wrapping up the end of the trip. And I just say, hey, let's go out, let's do something. Now, mind you, if you've been to Mexico, you know that you can go to a bar and get served at any point as long as you can reach the bar counter and have money to pay for your drinks, right? So nobody wants to go. Okay. My brother's friend Darren says, yeah, I'll go with you. Well, my brother couldn't go because his girlfriend had gotten some really bad third-degree sunburn. She didn't realize that she had to put sunscreen on because the sun was more aggressive than what it is in southwestern Minnesota. So it'd be a dick move if he went out with us and left her to be alone. So Darren and I leave. Now, mind you, again, it's early 2000s. I'm 16. Darren's about early 20s. Darren's about 6'2", tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, sticks out like a sore thumb. And again, early 2000s, we don't have cell phones because either we were too poor for them or we just didn't have one for whatever reason. So we just rely on a taxi and asking, drop us off in an area of bars. Okay, cool. So we go, we're out bar hopping, having drinks, having a great old time, right? And Darren and I ended up, the last stop, going to this cantina. Now, San Luis Potosí, mind you, I grew up in southwestern Minnesota, a town of 10,000 people, 3 stoplights in town, y'all. We were the biggest town for about a 30-mile radius. So San Luis Potosí is nothing like that. We're talking about 2 million people, okay? So, yeah. Here we go into this cantina. It's like this, I don't know, you've seen buildings in Mexico if you've been, where they're made out of like cement instead of wood structures. And on the inside, it's really like kind of gothy-ish, like red, and just not really welcoming vibes, but for whatever reason, it sounds like a good idea. Let's go. It serves drinks. So we go in there, and we are having drinks, and we're just having a good time. We're conversating. Darren excuses himself, says he has to go to the restroom. Okay, no big deal. Comes back out. Shortly after, someone from the bar, just like this stocky Hispanic man comes out and starts talking to me in Spanish. And luckily, I speak fluent Spanish. Spanish is actually my first language. My mother always said it was important for us to learn where we came from. So he starts telling me how Darren broke this mirror in the bathroom and how we had to pay for it before we left. So I turn around and I translate to Darren and I said, Darren, did you break the mirror in the bathroom? He goes, what is he talking about? That mirror was already broken. So I say, no, your mirror was already broken from what he says. They insist, no, you're going to pay for it. Well, I don't have like, $300-400 or whatever they're asking for to pay for this mirror. I just have enough to pay for our tab. So I'm like, you know what, close me out. It's been real, let's go. So we leave and I'm thinking, lucky me, there's a taxi right here just when I need it. Again, there's no Uber, right? We don't have cell phones. So I give him the address where to drop us off. We get in the car and we go. We get home, whatever, go to bed, no one cares. Wake up the next day, we're venturing around. Again, we still have about maybe 2-3 days left in the city before we road trip back home to Minnesota. And while we're out, the folks that worked at the bar come to my mother's house and tell her, hey, you guys broke this mirror and you guys need to pay for it. If you guys don't pay for it, we're gonna come back with the cops. Well, my mom knows that once you start giving money to somebody, they're gonna keep coming back and they're gonna keep coming back for whatever excuse. So she's like, absolutely not. They didn't break anything. We're not going to give you anything. They insist that they're going to bring the, law enforcement. And so, Darren, not being from Mexico, not being from there, probably wouldn't be very good for him, right? So that night, my mother says, you guys are going back. We are going to send you guys on a bus ride to Laredo, Texas. And they weren't going to leave earlier. Y'all goofed up. It wasn't on us. Y'all are leaving kind of deal. There was no buts, ands, or ifs. It was just pack your shit and go. Darren's pissed about it. Again, that proven, innocent until proven guilty kind of attitude. And, that's not how it rolls in Mexico, buddy. So my mom makes us pack our things. And here's the funny thing, right? My mom's more concerned about this broken mirror than she is about sending her 16-year-old daughter with some 20-some-year-old guy on a 12-hour bus ride and staying in some hotel for 2-3 days. No, she's not worried about that. But then again, my mom's also been the kind of person to throw me on a plane at 12 years old to fly from Minnesota to Mexico by myself. So, okay. So here we go. We're kind of pissed about it. Why? Why are we leaving? This is so stupid. And we're just talking about this the entire 10, 12-hour bus ride. I really don't question my mom a whole lot. I've always been kind of the bad child. But when my mom lays her foot down, I just bow and do as I'm told. And so she gives us money to go check in at a hotel in Laredo, Texas. And she says, once you reach there, call us and give us the details of the hotel where you're going to be staying. Okay, whatever, right? So we eventually make our way to the hotel. And again, we're just thinking, this is bullshit. Why did you guys make us leave? And Darren, once again, that attitude of, I didn't do it. And, their word against mine. It's no, that's not how it works, friend. And again, I'm not going to question my mom on her choices. But thanks for sharing.
What a cool mom. She's actually, my vacation matters. Not yours. I'm glad you made it out. I think he broke that mirror, though. White people, am I right? Just kidding.
This is why I don't go to Mexico with tall, blonde, blue-eyed guys.
I know. So, me too. That's the only reason. Okay, never mind.
So our next storyteller is Patrick Gallagher. Patrick shares a story about the need to get lost with his mom after a pivotal moment.
Guys, please put your hands together for Patrick Gallagher.
So I found that sometimes when I bail to get as far away as I possibly can. And sometimes I bail just to create enough distance to be able to see my way back. And that's what my mom and I did in the end of this long, hot summer of 1993. We had just sent my sister off to college in Penn State, 3 hours away in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. My parents had just recently separated. I had just finished 7th grade and was not looking forward to going back to 8th grade. And we were at this moment where we thought, we're alone in this house for the first time without the kind of family that we were used to, and we needed to get out. We needed to escape. And something that my mom has always been very good at is knowing when it's time to escape. She would let me stay home from school and watch Price is Right when I needed a day off. Sometimes we would just pack up a bag and get in the car and go down the shore and hang out on the beach for the day when we needed just to get away from home. And in this moment, we knew it was time to get away. We did have to kind of sheepishly ask my dad to borrow his car because my mom's car was not up to the trip, but we knew we wanted to go to the furthest away place that we could imagine. And our imagination in this case was, somewhat materially constrained. So we decided we were going to go to Maine. We had this old guidebook, the Explorer's Guide to Maine, that we dusted off, and we decided we're going to find a place to go in Maine. My dad willingly gave the car to us, and his car came, this was 1993, with turn-by-turn directions that were written on white-lined legal paper in bright blue ink in all capital letters with little reference points to help us through. Perhaps because he didn't totally trust us to pull off this trip, but also out of a kind of paternal care. So we got in the car and we drove north for 7 hours. And the first stop on this trip was in a town that was familiar. We stopped in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, not quite to Maine, a place that we had been to before as a family and felt like a good kind of starting off point for the trip. So we settled in there for the night. We had dinner in town at this restaurant where we were looking out over the Piscataqua River, the river that divided New Hampshire and Maine. And I was having clam chowder from a bread bowl because I was going to do all of the New England things while I was there. And as we were sitting there looking out the river, this like dense fog starts settling in over the bridge and over the river. And it was like this wet blanket on our road trip enthusiasm. It was this like sense of gloomy doom. But we thought, we'll go on. We got up the next morning, the fog had lifted, and we thought we'd go over that bridge and head up to Maine. And we went north to this town of Gunkwit, which is like the kind of quintessential charming New England town with white clapboard buildings and art galleries and a nice beach and a rocky shoreline. And we found an inn that we could stay at just outside of town that was pretty nice and pretty reasonably priced. And I remember my mom going back to Portsmouth to the bank to find money from an account to put the deposit down on the hotel. It was this kind of sense when you're 13-year-olds, you don't know what's going on, but you know she's kind of working to make it happen. And she made it happen. We stayed there, we checked in. That afternoon, we walked into the town, and we found this old kind of market deli place and looked at the menu, and there was this thing on the menu, a lobster roll. Yeah. So it was 1993. There weren't like food trucks in San Antonio selling lobster rolls. It was special. And we ordered 2 of them. They came wrapped in gray deli paper. And, by the time we brought the sandwiches back down to the front porch and these big Adirondack chairs to sit and eat them, it was already saturated with butter and oil and fat. And we opened them up and bit into this kind of lightly toasted New England hot dog roll. The butter's streaming down our face, the lobsters in our mouth, and we're thinking, whatever else happens, this was worth it, right? But other things happened. In the course of the few days that we spent there, we kind of settled into this routine together. We'd wake up in the morning and take a walk along the marginal way, this kind of rocky pathway along the shore. And then we'd go hang out at the beach and read for a while. And then we'd climb back up the rocks and into town and go to that place and have a lobster roll every day. And we'd go back in the afternoon. We played tennis on this old tennis court at the inn that nobody else seemed to play on. Neither of us really knew how to play tennis, but it was just a thing we did at the time to kind of spend time together. And then the evenings, we'd walk into town and hang out and have dinner and have ice cream. And the final night that we were there, we followed that same routine, and we walked back into town, and we found this old movie house, and it was playing Forrest Gump, which is like the quintessential 1990s Bale movie, Run, Forrest, Run. And like a lot of 90s pop culture, that movie didn't age particularly well, but this old movie house was aging beautifully. It had these great old solid wood auditorium chairs, and there's a snack stand in the lobby where we got a big bucket of popcorn in this striped bucket, and we had big icy cold sodas, and my mom cried during the whole movie, and I sort of laughed, and then we walked out, and the doors opened from this old movie house into the town, and it was one of those perfect late summer nights, right, where everybody's out in town. There are teenagers hanging out on the benches talking. There's people coming out of restaurants and cafes. And we walked around, and we found on the edge of town this little piano bar. It was a bright yellow building with big windows that opened to the sidewalk. And there were a bunch of mostly older men gathered around this piano singing show tunes and standards. And my mom and I just kind of sat there listening and letting the light and the energy of that space kind of come out onto the sidewalk, onto us. And in that moment, in this town really far away, my mom and I kind of felt at home together. So we had that night. We walked back to the inn, and in the morning we woke up for the final day that we were going to be there, and we stopped for breakfast just before we crossed the border back to Maine, kind of pausing before we left this little world that we had created there. And at that cafe, like a lot of restaurants at the time, there would be that big metal kind of rack of real estate listings. And you'd open up this glossy magazine with all these houses in it, and you'd flip through, and there'd be weird, headshots of real estate agents. And we brought that over to the table, and I brought it over to the table, and I started showing my mom these houses, mostly old houses with big front porches, classic New England houses. And I said, look, we could live here and we could walk into town, or we could live here and I could walk to the beach and it would be perfect. And my mom was sort of smiling and nodding, sort of being polite, but definitely not in with my vision for the future. And at the end of the breakfast, I had closed up the magazine and we had paid the bill, and my mom turned to me and she said, buddy, I think it's time to go home. And she was right. She was good at knowing when it was time to escape, but she's also really good at knowing when it's time to come back, when it's time to go home. So we got in the car, got on 95 South. My dad's directions only went one way, but we don't read into that. I'm sure he wanted us to come back. And we drove south. We went across the Piscataqua River that we had been looking at, back into New Hampshire, across the Merrimack River, into Massachusetts and the Connecticut and the Hudson, and finally, after 7 hours, we came down a big green hill and over the Delaware River and back into Pennsylvania. And after this long, beautiful trip to the furthest place we could imagine, my mom and I had found our way back home. Thanks.
Damn,
awesome.
I want a lobster roll
I
so
know.
bad.
There was this collective across the audience.
I think I started it. I was just just drooling. That butter scene, I want that in my life.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow, what a good story.
Yeah.
I could have you as like a sleep machine. Just talk about butter. All right.
Oh, man.
Our next storyteller is Linn Waiters. Linn shares a story about a dream that almost turned into a nightmare.
So let's everybody give it up for Linn Waiters. Come on up, Linn.
When I was 15 years old, my mom and my stepdad rented a house at 711 East Palmetto Street. I loved that house. That house had a porch that went all the way across the front, and it had two front doors, or two doors on the front. The main door led into the living room and dining room with built-in china cabinets, all carved and everything. And behind the dining room was the kitchen, and behind the kitchen was a breakfast nook where we ate most of our meals. Now, the door to the left of the front door was a door that led into my mother's bedroom. Now, if you went in that door, you could go all the way through her room, toward the hall, into the bathroom, past my sister's room, and then at the very back was my bedroom. I loved it. At the very back. If you stood in the door of my bedroom, facing, I guess, north at the time, you would look straight across into the kitchen. And to the left was the back door. And off the back door was probably a little utility porch or screened-in back porch where you kept the mop and bucket and stuff like that. Now, the screened-in back porch closed or locked with a little metal slide lock. The main door closed with a regular lock. So, no big deal. Now, this was summertime. And back then, when I was 15, no houses had central heat and air. If they had air conditioning, they had a window unit that was either in the living room or they may have a second in a bedroom where they could channel the air to go through the house. So most windows were large windows and they were kept open all the time unless it rained. At night, you would pull down your Venetian blinds and close them, or you'd pull down the window shade and you'd close that. Well, my bedroom at the back, my windows were toward the far end of the room, so I had the head of my bed toward the inside wall. The foot of the bed was in front of the windows, and I loved looking out the windows at night. So my windows were wide open. I closed the window shade down to where I could look out at the lights and smell the air and all of that. Now, my stepfather had been transferred overseas. So there's nobody in the house but us women, or girls, a woman and some girls. So so we're there, and it's time to go to bed. Summer night, it was time to go to bed. And I usually slept in a short nighty gown or a long T-shirt. I did not wear pajamas because my grandmother Ellen, my father's mother, had taught me you don't wear pajamas as a young girl because it cuts off your circulation while you're asleep. So to this day, I don't wear pajamas. Okay? So it's time to go to bed, so everybody settles down and we go to bed. Sometime during the night, I'm one of these people who sleep in place. I never disturb one side of my bed. I can just get up, pull it up, and my bed's made. And I've always been that way. So I was asleep on my right side, facing the window. And sometime during the night, I decided, it's time to turn over. So I kind of move my left leg, and when I move my left leg, I feel something at the foot of my bed. And I said, my sister done got up and come in bed with me. What? Why? They have their own bed. Why would they come and get in bed with me? And then something else came to mind. But there was also something up by my head. And I said, wait a minute. I'm the tallest person in the house. There's no way their feet can be down here and their head up here. So I decided, turn over. So I turned over and looked right into the eyes of a man with light brown eyes, head propped on his shoulder, and he's just looking. I didn't know what to think, but I knew I was getting out of that bed, okay? So I just reached over, shoved him real hard, jumped over him, ran up the hall to my mom's room and started calling her. And I said, somebody's in my room, somebody's in my room. My mom's not afraid of much of anything, okay? And she said, girl, you just had a nightmare. Just go on and go back to sleep. Just a bad dream. I said, no, somebody was in my room. So I guess I was insistent enough that she got up. She came with me to the back to my room. We turned on the light, looked under the bed, looked in the closet, looked behind the door. We never thought to look toward the kitchen. There was nothing there. So she said, see, I told you, go on, go back to bed. You can sleep with one of your sisters or sleep in your own bed. So I decided to go sleep with my sisters, one of my sisters. So I went in their room, and then a couple of hours later, she had to get up and go to work. And all of a sudden, I heard this scream. I don't know if she screamed my name or she screamed what, but she screamed. And I jumped out of bed. I went toward the back door, and I said, what is it? She said, you weren't dreaming. You weren't dreaming. Somebody did break in the house. The back door had been propped open with a rock. The screened-in porch, the screen had been cut. The lock had been slid open. And so she said, call the police. So I'm going to do like I was told. I'm 15. But I thought, what are we going to do? There's nobody there. But by the time it was time for me to start high school in September, she had bought a house, and we had moved away from 711 East Palmetto.
Dude.
I got nothing. I don't know. I
Oh
don't
my
even
God.
know. Yeah. If that had happened to me, I'd.
When Lynn first told me, I was like, oh, she's dreaming. And then I hear like the end of it, and I was like, okay, you have to tell a story. I need to hear. Yeah. It made me feel scared. I saw people gasping over here. You guys are chickens. All right. I love it.
All right. Our next storyteller is Michael Suarez. Michael's going to tell us a story about a night in jail and how no one ever told him exactly how to make bail.
Please put your hands together for Michael Suarez.
In July of 2018, one morning, I woke up in jail. It was very concerning because I didn't remember falling asleep in jail. I'm on a metal table in a room by myself, and as I'm waking up and coming to, a guard comes in bringing somebody else into the cell, and I ask her, hey, what's going on? And she gives me finger guns, and says, you gotta wait for the magistrate. He's not here yet. And I was like, okay, fun cop, all right. The guy I'm with tells me, you need to make a phone call. He makes his phone call collect. He shows me how to do it. I've never been in jail before. Luckily, I had a tutorial with me. I make my phone call. I call my wife, who is not happy to hear this information. She loves surprises, not this kind. Apparently, she'd been calling hospitals around the city because she thought I was dead. Yeah. She went from terrified I was no longer alive to furious that I was. After about 10 minutes of an argument that I am paying by the minute for, we get called to the magistrate, and I get handcuffed in a line of other people. To my left is a woman with no shoes, who looks probably as haggard as I do. To my right is a person, a short man, about 5'5", who looks very clean cut. His t-shirt's tucked into his jeans. He looks great. All of us have had our belts and shoelaces taken away. As they're taking us to the thing, another officer says, "Go this way." To me, specifically, gives me another set of finger guns. Like, all right. We go to the magistrate. If you've ever been there, they tell you how much it costs to get out of jail, basically. They give you your bail amount. One to my left, they say, drunken, disorderly conduct, $2,000. Go to me. Driving under the influence, $3,000. Go to the person next to me, the clean-cut guy. Murder! Murder, $35,000. Which sounds like a deal when you put it that way. A Range Rover costs more than that. I felt like I turned and was looking up at him, but I am looking down. And then I've never had a game of duck, duck, murder before. But they take us back to our cells, and I go, "What's next?" And again, a different officer gives me finger guns and goes, "You just gotta sit here and wait till you make bail." So I call my wife again. It's been about an hour, so I'm pretty sure she's over it by now. That is not the case. Another information gathering session, gone through yelling. I find out she's gonna try to make bail. She asked me how to do it first. I was like, "I'm the one in prison right now. You're the one with the internet. How about we go on your side with that?" I can just go by my memories of night court reruns, so I am woefully unprepared. After another hour, I give her another phone call. She goes, "Okay, we found a bail bondsman. We paid your bail. Now you just gotta wait." And then she also yells at me some more, which is fair if ill-timed. But I keep asking what's going on. Every time I ask a guard what's happening, they always tell me, "In a minute. Just wait." Always a set of finger guns with their answer. Only to me, by the way. This is not a thing that's going out throughout the system. I am just waiting in what I guess is called like the petty crime corral. It's like very crowded, but it's just people who have done things get to go out that day. No one's killed anybody in this room. No one's hit their wife. It's just very just small crime. Like, "Oh, it stole something. I ran into something." It's never. So everyone's just kind of standing around. We're all very hot. We're all very thirsty. There's a water fountain, but it's connected to the toilet. So no one is in line for that. And you just sit there and you wait. Finally, guard comes up. They made me wait longer because it's my first offense. For some reason, they're like, "Let's give them the whole experience the first time around." They want to make sure that you don't have any other crimes throughout the country. They're like the Ted Bundy of Maine, you know what I mean? It's like, "Oh, we got the California Stabulator here." Like, they don't want you just to get away by accident. So they get me out. They go, "Let's go, Chief." And then they hand you your belt. They hand you your shoelaces. You have to put them on. And they send you on your way. And when you first get out into the sunlight, it felt like, "Oh my God, I'm free. I've been in there for 12 hours. I felt like the Shawshank Redemption. Oh, it's hard to start anew. But cut to 2 months later. I meet with my lawyer for the first time after hiring him to talk about my case. He says, "Hey, sit down." It's like, what the hell is this? He starts playing the video of the body cam footage of my arrest. Which, if you've ever been arrested, I recommend checking it out. I get pulled over. The first thing they ask me is, "Have you been drinking?" And I said, "Yeah, a couple." My lawyer stops the tape, and he goes, "What are you, an asshole?" Hits play again. They had me go through the motions. They had me do a sobriety test. And he goes like, yeah, you were too fat for that. You don't need to do that. It's like, what? Why am I paying for abuse all the time? What is happening? And this is the part I want you to see. Cape T's playing. They put me in handcuffs. I'm just standing there. One of the cops, I guess, has an issue with me driving under the influence, which I understand, all right? Like, how could you do that? Like, I was drinking, so I wasn't making the best decisions. I understand that. Well, who do you think you are? And my reaction was to go, I'm Max Suarez, baby. And that's my story.
I love stories that start, I woke up in jail and I don't remember how I got there. Those are great.
Did you eat the bread? Because it's jail. It's moldy. I was having flashbacks. That's another time. Can you guys clap it up for all the storytellers you just saw? All right, we're gonna get right back into it. We have 3 more for you, so let's get started. Our next storyteller is David Rubin. David shares a story about a visit to the airport that went very wrong.
Let's welcome David Rubin.
My story took place in the summer of 1973, and I'm gonna do the math for you. That was 50 years ago. And my cousin and I, we liked to go out to the airport and play pinball. We were real pinball wizards, and the main reason was because back then at the airport only, you could still get 3 games for a quarter instead of 2. And after we spent our money, we go out. There's a little free parking there by the cab stand, and we're getting in my mom's really boss 1969 Firebird Esprit. And there's these 3 people that are kind of arguing with the cab driver, and they're really, really kind of nasty looking. One guy has really long, streaky hair. He looks like Charles Manson, barefoot, limping with an umbrella. And the other guy, tall, long hair, mustache, and was a kind of a granola girl. And the scruffy guy comes over and he says, hey, kids, we're not going to take a cab. We'll give you $20 if you take us to the bus station. Now, we're 17 years old, which means we're real idiots. And what could possibly go wrong? And in our defense, $20 was a lot of money back then. So we're like, yeah, sure, pile in. So they get in the car, and the mean guy's name is Pat, tall guy's name is Howard, and his girlfriend, Pat's girlfriend's name is Wally. So we're heading down San Pedro, and I'm thinking, I have no freaking idea where the bus station is. And there's a biker bar in the way. He says, hey, pull over and we can go get some drinks. Of course, here again, 17-year-old boys, not very high on the intelligence charts. Like, yeah, this will be fun. So we go in, and this guy is knocking him back. And I actually see him in the corner. He's buying a bottle of rum from a bartender. And so we stay there for about an hour, and then we get back in the car, and we're heading back south down San Pedro, and it just gets really tense in the car. And all of a sudden, he tells me, take a left here, pull over. And I went, okay. And maybe he knows where the bus station is. And he said, turn off the car. And I went, oh, shit, he's going to steal this car. And he looks at me and he said, this car's going to Mexico. And I thought, is that with us or without us? And actually what I said was, what? And he took that umbrella and wiped me right across the face. It didn't really hurt, but scared the crap out of me, broke my nose, knocked my glasses off. And I said, okay. And he said, turn around. And I'm like, okay. So I'm heading back up towards San Pedro thinking, I don't think this is the way to Mexico. And he's got an umbrella against my head saying all kinds of nasty things. And as we get up towards the malls, and he said, take a left here, I pulled into the Central Park Mall parking lot. Older people here will remember this. And so we get out. This is about 2 in the morning. And we get out of the car, and he comes over, and I thought, oh, God, is this going to be another beating or what? And take the car, go. But instead, he's crying, and he's like, I can't believe I hit you. I'm so sorry. I'm really not like that. I'm a nice guy. We killed somebody in Houston. I'm like, whoa, wait. I didn't need to know this. I didn't hear that. And I look, and my father actually had a store in Central Park Mall. I'm looking at his loading dock over there. It's just very surreal. So we were chatting and getting kind of friendly, I guess. He said, look, if you can take us to a hotel, we'll be out of your hair. We thought, okay. So we went to a couple of hotels. You're not letting this guy in. He's barefoot and earring and all this. So finally I thought, I think I need to take them to the Austin Highway because back then it was pretty seedy and I knew there's a $3 motel. And so we go and there's a place called Western Sun. So we pull in and smartly sent the girl in to rent a room. She comes back, she's jiggling the keys and go, I got a room. And Pat gets out and he's coming around my window and I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's gonna give me $20. Instead, he grabs me by my hair. And by the way, I was only about 5'1", weighed about 80 pounds. He pulled me out like I was nothing, yelled, get the other guy. And he's dragging us into this room. And there's a guy walking down the street I'm yelling, help, help, this guy's gonna kill us. He just kept walking. That was a scary part. It gets a little worse. So he drags us into room number 3, throws us into the closet, and then he's just going ballistic. I mean, this guy's like Jekyll and Hyde, and he's breaking things, and he's like, I got to kill him, I got to kill him, and Howard's over there going, yeah, you got to kill him, and Mike and I going, shut the fuck up, Howard. So Wally, the girl, basically saved our lives, and she got in his face and was like, look, these are kids, they don't know anything, they're idiots, and they're... So he drags me out, leaves Mike in, and I can't see anything because it's now real bright, throws me against the wall. This I'll never forget. It's 50 years ago. And he's standing over me with this pained look, and he said, I'm not a violent person. I thought, bullshit. You are really fucking violent. So not a violent person, but if you kick me in the balls right now, I just look at you and say, why did you do that? And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that. I promise. Next thing I know, we're in a car. We're heading down south, going to Mexico, down I-35. I fell asleep in the car. We woke up, and here again, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Fuckface. I mean, Jesus Christ, this guy was like, oh, so nice, and he's buying us breakfast. But this is where Stockholm Syndrome kind of kicks in, because now we know we're captives, they know they're the bosses, and we're all being nice to each other. So next thing I know, we're heading down towards Brownsville, and we turn off at some dirt road close to the tip of Texas, and we're in there's this shack out there. It's like a hideaway place. And they get out of the car, and my cousin Mike and I, we're in the car, and we're like, should we start the car and get out of here? And how many detective shows have you seen where you start the car and it goes, dun, 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 and it don't move, and they hear it, and they come out with whatever. So we said, we'll just get out of the car, and we go inside and look, and there's farm implements all over. There's a sickle on the wall and hose and rakes and all this. And Mike looks and he goes, hey, let's go to Mexico. So we pile back in the car, head down to the border, cross the border, because nobody gives a shit when you go into Mexico. And we go down there, and first thing he does is go into a boot store and put on boots and walk out with him because he had no shoes. And then he starts drinking tequila, and he's starting to get all nasty again. And we're going back across the border, and he said, look, boys, if you don't say anything, we're just going to cross the border. You drop us back, and we're all good. And remember, we're 17. We're boys. We're idiots. And we're like, okay. So we go back across, and he says, my feet hurt. We need to get some socks. We pull into a Gulf Mart, if anybody remembers those stores. And we're sitting at a dinette set, and Wally, the woman's going buying him socks because he can't buy his own socks. And the store detective comes up, or security, and says, you can't sit here. And of course, he's drunk and he's mouthing off. And so he calls the police. And the police come and they arrest him for drunken disorderly. So Mike and I are like, yeah, the bad guy's gone. You know, here again, we weren't thinking very clearly. So we said, look, we'll take you guys back, and we're gone. So we take him back to the place. And Wally says, you know, it's really late. Why don't you guys just spend the night here, and then you can leave in the morning? And we're like, yeah, okay, yeah. So we fall asleep, and Mike wakes up, and he tries to wake me up, and he didn't want to make a lot of noise. So he went ahead, took the car, counted the poles to the gas station to ask where the Brownsville police station was. And when he got there, he's told them what happened, and they don't believe him because he's a 17-year-old idiot kid. And they call his mom. His mom say, yeah, they've been missing for 2 days, idiots. And so they're going to come back and get me, but we're not in their jurisdiction. So they had to call the Brownsville County Sheriff. And in the meantime, Howard wakes up and he sees the car gone. And all of a sudden, Howard grows balls and goes ballistic and starts throwing shit. Where's the car? Waking me up. And I'm like, I don't know, it's gone. And all of a sudden, he starts looking at the sickle on the wall and he looks at me and I'm like, oh God, no, you're not that smart. And the next thing I know, the lights are flooding in and the police are like, come out with your hands up. He bolts out the back door. I come out the front door with my hands up, like I'm the guilty one, and hit me with the lights. And so they found him out back and they took us all down to the police station and arrested Howard, but not Wally. So they put my cousin and I in the drunk tank for some reason, and we're there, and Wally comes up, and she's, Mike goes up to talk to her, and she says, boys, I apologize for everything that happened. I know we promised you $20, so here's $20. And the only thing that I could think of to tell my cousin is, half of that's mine. Thank you. I just want to say my cousin happens to be sitting right back over there who went with me. So, thank you.
A very different trip to Mexico.
Yeah.
Oh,
Think
man.
of easier ways to make $20.
I know.
Yeah.
I really like a nice criminal. Love it.
So our next storyteller is Norma Schmelling, and she's going to tell us a story about how it takes a pair of balls to really send a message.
Yeah, let's all welcome Norma Schmelling.
Our cruise ship was headed across the Drake Passage to Antarctica. And the Drake Passage is known for being extremely rough because it's where the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans meet and then the southern seas come up from Antarctica. Our passage was made even rougher because the captain had told us he was trying to outrun a weather system, and so he was going to be going 50 knots, which is about 60 miles an hour. And throughout the night, I would hear this thud, thud, thud as we would hit these waves. And every time that happened, my balcony door would swing open, swing shut, swing open, swing shut. I was too tired to get up and close it. The next morning I got up, the cabin was really hot. So I opened that door, got dressed, went out onto the balcony, and as I was out there, I began to get cold because all I had on was 2 sweaters, a pair of pants, socks, and shoes. Suddenly, we hit another big wave, thud, the door slammed shut. I didn't think anything about it. It'd been doing that all night long until I went to open it. And then it would not open. I tried several times, it would not open. I looked in and I saw that latch had caught. And I thought, I'm in trouble. Because I was traveling alone. Even though I was part of a group, I hadn't really gotten to know anybody. I wasn't going to be missed. It was noon. The next time I figured someone would come into my cabin would be the steward for turn down service at 7 o'clock that night. I'd be a frozen little popsicle out on the balcony by then. So I thought, how am I going to get out of this? Fortunately, there were rooms on either side of me. And so I thought, well, maybe somebody's in those rooms and I can call out to them. And so I looked around the partition. It was solid, ran from the top to the bottom, looked around, called out, hello? No response. Went to the other side. Hello? No response. Later, I would find out there was nobody in either of those rooms. But ever so briefly, I considered getting on the railing and trying to work my way over to that balcony where if someone did come in, they would see me. But then I looked down at those waves and I thought, nah, don't even go there. You've got to come up with something else. And that was when I realized I've got to scream. and I've got to scream really loud. And I'm not a screamer. I've never screamed in my life. When I'm scared, and that wasn't going to cut it out there. And then it occurred to me, I've got to use my cattle calling voice. And the reason I know how to call cattle is because I was once married to a rancher. And the first time we went out in the pasture for him to show me his cows, we drove in, there was not a cow to be seen. I said, well, we're out of luck. He said, just wait. He got out of the car, went around the back, wah! 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 And he did that for about 5 minutes. And here comes cattle galloping across the pasture. And I said, I want to learn how to do that. And he said, well, you can't. And I said, why? And he said, because you're a girl. And I said, what has that got to do with it? And he said, well, because you have to call cattle from your balls. And you don't have any. And so I thought, we'll see about that. So I said, well, let me try. So we drove into another pasture, not a cow to be seen. I got out of the car. Wah! 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 In about 5 minutes, here come the cows. So I looked at him. I didn't say a thing. He was really sheepish. He said, well, it's not bad for a girl. So that was the voice I knew I had to use. I couldn't go, help, help. It was going to have to be help, help, help. And I started calling. And after about 5 minutes, I realized I can't do this continuously or I'm going to lose my voice. So I would call, stop, no response. I was beginning to get really cold. And I thought, what am I going to do? So I started calling again. And I hear this voice from above say, where in the hell are you? And I stuck my head out and looked up, and there was this man's face looking down at me. And I explained my situation to him. He said, just stay where you are, like I'm gonna go anywhere. I'll send somebody down. So I waited and waited and waited, and nobody came. So I get it again and start bawling out, help, help, and his face appears immediately. And he says, no one's come. I said, no. He said, I'll take care of that. Within a minute, there was a steward in my room, let me out. As soon as I got in my room, I put on a coat, went upstairs to find this savior who had come to my rescue. And I discovered that there was a bar over my cabin, and then there was a balcony around that bar. And my new best friend, whose name was Dave, had gone out onto the balcony to smoke. And it was the only time in my life I've been grateful for somebody smoking. Thank you.
Let's get up for her balls.
Yeah.
First time I heard Norma say balls, I was like, say it again.
I want her to teach me how to do that.
I know,
I'm not
right?
sure I have the balls.
Yeah, yeah. We'll find out. It's our last storyteller. Are you sad or what? Okay, calm down. Our final storyteller of the night is Galileo Gonzalez. Galileo is going to share a story about how not all crazy cat people are created equal.
Please welcome our final storyteller of the night, Galileo Gonzalez.
Can y'all hear me? Cool. So I work at a digital library, and one of the most important rules at my job is to not give out anyone's personal information, and this is why. So the first year at my job, there was this patron, I want to call him Jim. Jim was a crazy cat guy. He was unkept, full of dander, reeked of cat food, but he was very intelligent and very kind to the staff. We were happy to help him out with whatever he needed. On a day off, I get a phone call. It's a 210 number, so I answer it. It's Jim. Apparently, Jim asked my boss if he knew somebody trustworthy who'd watch his cats while he's out of town for the weekend. And my boss had the genius idea of giving him my phone number. Nevertheless, I said yes. So we set up a meetup time. He gave me the keys to his home and broke down the rules for me as to how to feed the cats and watch them and everything. So the first day of cat sitting, I enter his house and it is a mess. To summarize it simply, the cats did not live with him, he lived with the cats. There were maybe around 7 to 10 cats. I don't remember most of them. I do remember Squeaky and Stinky, who had a missing eye. So when Jim came back from his trip, he was so happy with the job I did that he paid me very generously, about $100 for like a weekend. So pretty good. And he asked if I could watch his cats whenever he goes out of town. Jim, being a great patron at work, I said, yeah, why not? I'll watch your cats. So I did. I'd watch his cats whenever he'd go out of town. Sometimes Jim would invite me for lunch at his home. So I'd go, I'd hang out with him. And usually the conversations will start very, pretty simple, but eventually he will start talking about how the FBI and Secret Service have been harassing him for years. So these conversations pretty much started veering towards crazy cat guy territory. But because Jim was a great patron and paid very generously, I just let him talk. One day, I am about to clock in for work, and I get a phone call. It's a phone number I don't recognize, so I just send it to voicemail. I listen to it, and it's somebody claiming to be from the Secret Service, asking about me, and that they have questions about Jim, and to call him at a specific number. Now, at this point, I'm thinking, this has got to be a cruel joke. This isn't real. So I go ahead and I Google the phone number, and the first search result is Secret Service Branch San Antonio. So I call back. The agent answers. I will say that the Secret Service agent was actually a very nice gentleman. And he just started asking me, oh, hey, how did you meet Jim? How do you know him? So I tell him, hey, he's a patron at my job. I've been watching his cats for about a few months. That's pretty much it. So then the agent starts telling me, well, Jim has been under investigation by both the Secret Service and the FBI. He has threatened to firebomb his previous job. He has threatened to kill the president. And he has weapons stashed all over the neighborhood. The same neighborhood I live and work in. At this point, I'm realizing that everything Jim was saying has been the absolute truth. So before the call ends, the agent asks if I have any questions. I don't, but I tell him that I'm tripping out because I thought this whole time Jim was just a crazy cat guy. And then the agent tells me, well, yeah, he is a crazy cat guy, but he's also very intelligent, and that's a dangerous combination. So the phone call ends, and everything after that pretty much becomes a shit show. My girlfriend is very unhappy with me because of the situation I got myself into. The FBI actually go to my job while I am out for lunch because they were trying to look for me to ask me questions, and my boss really just wants to write me up, even though he got me in this mess in the first place. Anyway, so weeks pass, and I'm still watching his cats. And I get a phone call from Jim. Jim left Texas. He hates it here. But he has just one more job for me, and that's it. Somebody's gonna come to pick up the cats, and to just wait for them the next day. So I'm like, all right, cool, that sounds fine, I guess. So I go to his home. I wait for the car that's gonna come up, and this truck pulls up full of kennels, and this lady pops out, and she's like, "Are you Galileo?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay, I met Jim through a Facebook group. I promise I'd watch his cats if something crazy were to happen because I thought it was just a bunch of baloney. I'm coming all the way from Round Rock, and I can't believe I just got myself in this mess." And I'm just like, "Yeah, I'm there with you." So I go ahead, I open the door to his home. We get the cats out, and she's pretty much on her way. I'm thinking this is the end of it all. So about a few weeks later, I get a phone call from, not a phone call, I get a text from Jim thanking me for everything I did and for the way, for watching his cats and how grateful he is. And I never replied back. I end up just going to the T-Mobile store and changing my phone number. Thank you.
I'd give the clothes off my back to you. Would it be enough to satiate you? I don't know, but I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm going back to the wooded glen, in the sunlight perched atop the fence.